The Austrian Grand Prix has come and gone pretty quickly, but oh my god, has it delivered. Let's debrief. Well, first and foremost, quick contract talk. Both Gasly and Stroll renewed their contracts with Alpine and Aston Martin respectively. Not very surprising and doesn't really change anything. I think the whole driver's market's pretty stuck until Carlos makes his decision, which he was supposed to announce something in Spain, but that didn't happen, so I wonder what happened there. If I were him, I would go to... Actually, I would probably have a mental breakdown because I'm a very anxious person and I'm not built for this kind of career-changing decision. So thankfully, I'm not in that situation, but he has to make a decision. So like, decide please, Carlos, everyone's waiting for you. So Austria last year was very popular for track limits penalties. So to prevent that, they actually put gravel traps in turns 9 and 10, but that didn't stop other penalties and also track limits penalties. And we also saw quite a lot of people going off into the gravel a few times during practice and the quali sessions. So moving on to that, first is the sprint quali, because this is a sprint weekend after all. As Q1, as I said, a lot of people going off to the gravel. We had Logan out-qualifying Alex by 2/10, which also got him into SQ2, in which, again, both Alpines got into Q3 and out-qualified both Aston Martins. And in SQ3, they all went really late in the session. They like waited for the last 2-3 minutes to go out of the garage because like they wanted to do just one run. And like, I'm not a strategy person. I don't claim to understand that aspect of the sport very well. But if you're going to have just one run, why not go earlier in the session? Like, why do you need to save it for like the last few minutes where things can go wrong? And honestly, most of the times I try not to question those decisions that they make about that strategy, because like, they're supposed to know what they're doing, but apparently today they didn't know what they were doing, because Charles Leclerc, of course it's Charles, had like an issue in the pit lane with anti-stall, so he went out a bit later than everyone else, who, by the way, barely made it either to the line before the flag, but Charles missed it completely, so he didn't even put in a time. But anyways, McLaren went 1-2 for just a second until Max took that away and ruined the party. The sprint itself, not very exciting. Well, first of all, they did 2 formation laps because the first start was aborted. So that's one last racing lap. Not that I think it really mattered. But yeah, Lando overtook Max for a second. Max overtook him right back. Lando tried to overtake him again into turn 4, and Oscar took that chance to overtake Lando. Almost overtook Max as well, but that was pretty much everything that happened in the sprint. Daniel got passed through some people, and Logan finished ahead of Alex. Now, going in chronological order of events in this weekend, we have the F2 sprint as well. Oliver Berman, who started P2 in a reverse top 10 from qualifying, of course, takes the lead immediately and maintains it for the whole race while having Pepe Marti in DRS range for pretty much the whole race. So very impressive stuff. His first win and podium of the season, hopefully more to come. And that also means that all of the teams in F2 has been on the podium this season. That's amazing. Can you imagine that happening in F1? But moving on to the F1 race qualifying. Q1 was very enjoyable and very close. Only just under 0.8 of a second between the entire field, which apparently is the closest Q1 session in F1 ever. Just goes to show how competitive and close this grid is. Q2, Daniel was so close to getting into Q3. It was 15 thousandths of a second between him and whoever was like the P10 there. But again, very close between everyone except Max, who was 0.5 clear of P2. So I kind of knew it was over for us in that moment. And he didn't disappoint, because in Q3 he was 0.4 ahead of Lando in P2. So I don't know how he did that. And then Oscar was supposed to be P3 again, but his lap time got deleted for track limits, which McLaren tried to appeal, but that didn't work. Again, chronological order, we have the F2 feature race next. A lot of people stalling off the line in the pit lane. Kind of insane and also kind of hilarious. Until it happens to your driver, then it's not that hilarious. And speaking of the devil, just when Prema is finally having a good race, both Ollie and Kimi are making a lot of places. Kimi stalls in the pit stop and comes out last, and Ollie has a technical issue and has to retire. Very disappointing on that front, but otherwise a great race, full of action as always. And now for the F1 race. Well, in the beginning, Max pulls away very easily and quickly builds a gap. Charles, the unluckiest man in the world, gets front wing damage from contact with Oscar and has to pit lap 1, comes out, I think last or 19th, and has to like battle his way up to the points again, which Ferrari said he could, but he just missed out. He was P11, so a really bad weekend for Charles. We had some fights between the Mercs, the Alpines, the Haas's, and Oscar and everyone around him. We had really beautiful overtakes around the outside of turn 6 and a lot of pit stop strategy, but pretty much a snoozer right until the second round of pit stops for the race leaders on lap 51 or 2, I think. Max is ahead of Lando, I think by 6 or 7 seconds. They both pit on the same lap. Max has a slow pit stop of 6.5 seconds and then has to wait to be released to let Lando go through to his pit. So when they come out of the pits, Max is obviously still ahead, but the gap is now under 2 seconds, and Lando has new medium tires while Max has used medium tires. So with that tire advantage, Lando closes the gap, and we have fights nearly at every corner. While they're fighting, we have other variables that might affect the final result of the race. Lando has a black and white flag for track limits, and then at one of his attempts to overtake Max, goes off the track to take the lead. Obviously, he gives the place back, but that puts him under investigation for another track limits. They're still fighting like crazy. I was so excited. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. Everyone is on the edge of their seat. And then boom, we have contact. Gives both of them a puncture. Both go into the pits. Max puts on softs, get out of the pits 5th. And Lando, there's too much damage. He needs to retire the car. And meanwhile, George Russell takes the lead of the Grand Prix and wins it. And also Oscar overtakes Carlos for P2, which was very beautiful to see. And we were left with the most unexpected winner for the day. And even though the racing was a little bit controversial and cunty, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was so good. So other than that drama, which we'll get to in a second, we have double points for Haas, and not just like double points P9, P10. No, P6 and P8. And who's P7, you asking? Checo fucking Perez, who was in DRS range of a Haas car and couldn't get past. What? And also Daniel finished in the points, which is great celebration for his 250th Grand Prix. Also, before I forget to say this, Hans Zimmer, the man, the legend, was the one who gave the P1 trophy for the Mercedes guy on the podium. And also I saw that he played the Austrian national anthem in the beginning of the Grand Prix. So, oh my god, that's so cool. Like, he's obviously Austrian, but I don't know, I didn't expect him to be there. Also, apparently he's scoring the F1 movie with Brad Pitt, so that's yet another reason to be excited for that. But going back to Earth for a second, I am very happy for George, who, as I said before, I'm slowly becoming a fan of. Of course, Oscar as well, who I can't help but wonder what could have happened if his lap time wasn't deleted in Q3. But nonetheless, it was honestly very refreshing to see Red Bull and Max making these mistakes for a change, which led to desperate and aggressive driving, making these 20 last laps probably the most exciting racing I have ever seen. Now, about the scandal and like the whole their friendship is doomed, which, by the way, I hope that doesn't happen, because as much as it might be naive to want all the drivers to be friends with each other, I still want that to happen, and I enjoy that aspect of F1 very much. And like just this week, Max said that Lando was his closest friend on the grid, so I just don't want another Bro-Sadies style breakup. But now about the actual racing, I do think the contact was Max's fault. Lando already committed to the outside line and Max moved under braking pretty much into Lando's car, but I don't think it was malicious. You need to remember that these things happen in high speed, high pressure situations, and they were both in it to win it and made a lot of mistakes during those battles. And that's just racing sometimes. I think they were both just trying their best to get this win, and hopefully we can all move past this very quickly in terms of, is it a controversy? Because all I saw was very exciting racing again. And by the way, Lando did have a 5-second penalty for track limits, and Max then got a 10-second penalty for the contact for causing a collision. Also, other penalties during the weekend, a lot of people crossing the entry line to the pit lane. I think someone was speeding in the pit lane as well, and maybe more, but that's what I remember. So Austria is still the haven for penalties in F1, even with their attempt to minimize them. So that's pretty much it, actually. I'm very excited and hopeful for Silverstone, and yeah, enjoy these memes. Bye!